Hello! Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm the Witch of Wonderlust here on YouTube and on Instagram, and today I'm interviewing TeeJay Ziegler, better known as the Half-Ass Witch on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and her website, thehalfasswitch.com. But of course, your girl's gotta get paid in order to continue to make videos, so I'm gonna thank my sponsor today, Ana Luisa. If you are new here, one of my sponsors is Ana Luisa. They are a wonderful jewelry company. I actually didn't used to wear too much jewelry until I started being sponsored by Ana Luisa. I love their products, and not only because they're beautiful, but also because they are 100% recycled gold. They are super good quality. Like, I have worked out, I have pole danced, I have put these things through some rough times, and the rings and earrings that I wear on a daily basis, it hasn't scuffed or scratched, and they look great. And again, some dangly earrings. I'm getting into the dangly earrings. And also they have these really pretty layered necklaces. They're like borderline witchy, not really, so I don't know, I'm digging it. I'll leave Ana Luisa's website down in the description below, and of course I have a discount code for you, so if you're interested, they make really great gifts, and so every time they send me some new jewelry, my friends are always excited because, you know, I love giving them as gifts. They're just so pretty and they make people happy. So yeah, if you're into the glam, then definitely check Ana Luisa out. So on to TeeJay. So if you don't know TeeJay Ziegler is known on the internet as the Half-Ass Witch. She's a 25-year-old working spiritualist in Southern California. She specializes as a death witch, working professionally as a practicing pagan hagza and an educational priestess. Her focus is on making deep healing magic and power relatable and accessible in application. So on to the actual interview. Grab yourself a drink and let's meet TeeJay. Okay, hello. Thanks for meeting with me.
Hi, I'm really happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. And TeeJay and I talk a lot on Instagram. Well, I mean, not like a ton, but we have back and forth. And
we're internet friends, I think.
We are, yeah. And this is like the first time we've like had a video call. So, I mean, I've watched your lives, so that kind of feels the same, but like not really.
It's not the same.
Okay, so we're just gonna dive into the interview. I have to ask, because I know that this is the one question that everybody always asks, what got you started in your spiritual path?
Yeah, honestly, I just, probably rebellion, to be quite honest. It was a little like, you know, fuck you. But I grew up in the Christian church. I used to be a Sunday school teacher, which is really funny. When people find that out, they're like, what? But yeah, no, I used to be a Sunday school teacher. My grandpa used to be my pastor. I used to play the piano in my church band and everything. So I was like neck deep in the church. And I honestly, the entire time I was doing it, I never bought in. And the first time, I think I realized that like witchcraft was a thing, I was like, oh my God, that's it. That's what I've been doing anyway. And I was like, oh, now there's like, okay, I get it. So really it was that. And I think a lot of the appeal for me was like personal power, because obviously like the only thing you need for witchcraft is like your body, your brain, and that's about it, right? All the other things are extras. And it really didn't like rely on anyone else. And like, yeah, I incorporate like deity work and religion now into my practice. But at the very beginning, it was just me, myself, and my hot little hands. And so I really, really enjoyed that I could kind of, I mean, all of the responsibility was on me and it was very independent. I'm also not like a group person. Like I have a network and friends and stuff, but like I'm not really like a coven person. I definitely am not someone who loves like organized practice, just because I feel like, you know, no one can tell you what to do but you. So I found my own little corner of the world and I love it so much. And so I'm super grateful that I did it. But yeah, it took a lot for me to even realize that witchcraft was a thing, right? Because I was in an environment and I was growing up in a family dynamic that like we didn't even talk about it. And obviously, right, like when you grow up a Christian, it's like bad. So you don't go look for it. You don't like Google it and go like, oh, what can I do or whatever. So when I finally went to college is when it all came to me, because I was finally out of the house and I was finally out of my area and I got to like explore things on my own. So that's how I found it. And now here we are.
How long have you been practicing? Like knowingly, unknowingly, just how long do you feel like you've been practicing?
Oh God, unknowingly, I would probably say my entire life, right? Like we all have that thing when we're little and we go like, oh, I was like, I really like these gods, or I found a rock and I thought it meant something. And when I was really, really young, I was into like Sailor Moon and all of the anime and stuff. And that's a lot of like if you get, if you boil down to it, that's energy work. It really, it really is. And I was always kind of like emulating what I saw. And now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, I was doing witchy stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, that's where she's at. But officially, knowingly, I would say about 8 years. And like professionally for 2.5, which I boggles my mind every day. I wake up and I get to do this and I'm like, okay, sure. I like it.
This is your full-time job now? This is what you do? That is so cool.
Yeah, it's been my full-time job for let me think. Yeah, I want to say about like 2.5 years. My business has been running and it's been my only source of income, which at first I was doing like regular jobs. Like when I first considered starting, because I started with tarot, and when I first considered starting charging for that and like making it a business, I was working at a school. I was like teaching third graders art. And like I was teaching them how to like use like nice cameras and stuff. And then like at one point I was working for Bumble and like Uber and places like that. I was doing digital marketing. And it had always been kind of floating in my brain. And it wasn't to a point, it wasn't until I got to a point where I basically had no job. And I was either going to go, okay, I've got to find another company to work for, or I could just work for myself. And I was already tired of like the marketing industry and everything. And I was working with like bloggers and stuff, which I have some really cool friends and cool connections that I made through that. But the basis of that industry is very superficial, and it's not very collaborative really either. It looks like it is, but it's really not. It's kind of a little too cutthroat for me, and I really didn't like it. And it killed my love of marketing and my love of like bringing products to people. So I just decided to start my own business, and now I can pay my bills and go on vacation, and it's like honestly insane.
Yes, business lady. So you said that you've been practicing quite some time. We've all, made some beginner issue mistakes.
Oh yeah.
Do you have any like advice that you would have given your younger self that you now know that you're like, you should have known?
I was struggling at first because I didn't feel like I was connecting. Like, people were like, oh, I felt, whatever. And I was always kind of like, I don't feel whatever. And then I realized that actually the problem is that I'm always connected. I'm always open, right? And so when we're looking for downloads and things to come to us, signals, we're looking for energy that feels different. But if you're always on, then nothing feels different because it's always there. So actually I would let myself, know that it's not working. It's just that I need to realize when it's working and when, to turn it off. The other thing I usually just remind or like newer people is that you really want to make sure that you maintain authority and autonomy over yourself and your own magic. Like I never let people read me unsolicited. I never really kind of let people do magic for me that I don't know or aren't my close friends. I also don't participate in magic with other people anymore. I did make that mistake with someone I was like dating at the time, and that was just not good.
So wait, so the person you were dating was also doing magic? Like they were also in the occult, spiritual?
Yeah, so that person had been raised by a more spiritual, like occult family, was raised pagan. And I was kind of fresh to the game or like the bigger community of like witchcraft and people who already did it and were like raised like that. So I got into that relationship, and I was like so happy because I had already gone through my spiritual awakening, and I was happy that I could be with somebody that I didn't have to explain that to. You know what I mean? You don't have to explain like it's a full moon, I gotta go outside at 3 a.m. and people were like, what? Like I was really excited that I didn't have to do that. But I then realized that that was kind of a mask that. And I also learned that, just because you're raised in a pagan and spiritual family doesn't mean that you've done the work, and doesn't mean that you're spiritual or that you know what you're doing or that you are doing it from a good place. So I was, in that dumb young love, like, I think it's going to work out and I think we're going to be together forever or whatever. And so we did magic to kind of solidify that. And then when we broke up, it was just a whirlwind of toxicity. And there was a lot of feeling stuck to each other at some point. And to a certain extent, I'm still having to clean up that mess. So it's, that's probably one of the biggest things that I would tell people. And I would tell myself, like my younger self, is just, if you don't need to do magic don't do it. And if you don't need to do it with other people, definitely don't do it. Like, just don't.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sure you get this a lot, is a lot of the time one of the probably top 3 questions I get is, how do I find a coven? How do I find a coven? And
Right.
I'm always like, don't.
Don't.
And I mean, I was in a coven, it was like an unofficial coven, but like I was in one, and it's really like, I love the people that I met from it, but magic is something so personal, something so, and like all those different energies, all those different people are going to have the same or have the idea of an intention, but they're all going to be different.
Right.
It's like when you're listening to a song and everybody is feeling the same way, but about different people, about different situations. So it's like kind of thinking that way, you have to be so in tune with somebody to do magic, or at least like very close,
Right.
depending on the magic that you're doing. So like when people are like, oh, I want to find a coven, I'm like, no, you don't. And
Right.
that also, when you're beginning, you don't need a bunch of other opinions
Right.
that you think are better than yours or like more true. And I don't know, I feel like joining a coven super early on is something that I would advise against.
Yeah, no, same. I definitely, because I feel like you're right too, you get all of those differing opinions, and it's just like, I always tell people too that like, if you don't know your opinion on something, you can't take other opinions, because you're just gonna go, oh, okay, that's right, and or you're right, or whatever. And so I do think that, because it is so like literally just personal, and it's just you at some point, and also it's you dealing with like, right, part of witchcraft is like shadow work and stuff. And so if you're in a coven, you have to like tell everybody all your business, because you don't know.
Well, that's like deep stuff. There's like some deep rooted stuff that you would be scared to tell your therapist. Like, that is what shadow work is, and so but that would be my advice. I don't think I regret joining my coven at all. It was definitely not something that was like super deep rooted in my practice, but I'm glad that I didn't end up wanting to join that would be my personal one. So when did you start reading tarot? Like, when was that something that became a staple in your practice?
Well, I started doing cartomancy with like regular playing cards when I was really young. I think I was like 6 or 7, and I was pretending like I didn't know what.
You're so young. Oh my god.
Dude, it's really crazy though, because I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, if I pull the 3 of hearts, I was like, I know that I shouldn't do whatever. Like, I was just making up my own system. It probably wasn't real cartomancy, but it's the same thing that I do with like the Yu-Gi-Oh cards and stuff, is where I make it up and then it just works. And so I was doing that when I was really little. And when I was way young, my aunt or my grandma, my great grandma, used to watch Passions, which was a old soap opera, and there was a witch in it, and she would read cards. And at first I was like, oh, okay, what's up with it?
Cool.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I like this. And that grandma was, that great grandma, she was like Cherokee. So even though she had married into like a Christian family, she was like, I'm gonna very slyly let you watch this when no one's around. And I think she knew, I think she had an idea of something. So after that, I was like really, really into it. I didn't get into it until I went to college. Right after high school, I went to the Art Institute. I went to go learn how to do graphic and web design. Well, I went for a paper. I knew how to do it already, but you know how people are like, you need a paper to do that thing. So I did that. And when I was up there, I ended up finding like a tarot card. I think I was at Urban Outfitters, and I found like a tarot deck. It was like a regular Rider-Waite deck. It was a mini deck too, and that's when I started. And I did it with my roommate, and she's like, you're really good at this. Like, I'd never done it before. And I was like, that's alarming almost. But like, yeah, no, thank you.
Like, I had a lot of previous prerequisites to practice with.
I've got all these prereqs wrapped up. I already know how to do all this. But no, it was the first time knowingly doing like divination, and it was insane. So that was, God, I want to say that was like 2014 maybe. And that's when, I did tarot first. And then I honestly want to say only within the last 3, maybe 2 years, probably since the start of my business, have I been doing things other than tarot. I did tarot for such a long time. Wow. And and now I'm doing like fucking healings and shit, bro. Like, nice. I'm doing
level up.
Well, and that was at a certain time I kind of lost my love for tarot. just not really feeling as connected to it, not feeling like it was as deep as I wanted to go. And to a certain extent, right, it's kind of like a coven sometimes. The tarot can be a little bit of a detriment. It can kind of be a crutch. And I feel like for me at this point, it's a helpful supplement. It's a helpful addition to other things that I do. But to just rely on tarot for me, I can't get deep enough. But also I'm a Scorpio, freaking Venus rising, Pluto, everything, and so I want to get like so deep it's ridiculous. I'm like, bury me in the earth.
Well, do you have a favorite deck now that you have been reading so long? Like, do you have one that it's just your go-to or you're connected with?
Yeah, I have two favorites. So the first deck actually that I ever got was that tiny Rider-Waite-Smith, and I don't have it anymore. But I do have the Golden Universal deck, which I love because I just love that it's like pretty much black and gold and metallic, and I'm bougie, and that's the person that I am. And I also really love the Santa Muerte Tarot. That one is my tried and true, like it's my baby for a really, really long time. That was like the only deck I used for ever. And I only got it, I think, like 2 years ago, but that was the first deck that I got that had artwork. All of the other decks I had were just different variations of the standard Rider-Waite-Smith. So even if they were like kind of stylized, it really wasn't. And the Santa Muerte Tarot was the first one that I got that had completely different artwork that was done by an artist. I think it was done by Fabio Lastrani, who's an Italian artist, and he's so good. He does like comic book artwork and stuff too. So I really like that deck because it's kind of gruesome a little bit. It's like bones. It really looks like the Dia de los Muertos and like all of that beautiful imagery. So I love that deck. I love it so.
Look it up. It sounds. I love Santa Muerte. So like, I mean, I don't work with her or anything, but I feel like that you like look up to, you know. So like, it's never anybody that I would like approach.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people actually come at me a little bit about that deck because they're like, oh, if you don't work with Santa Muerte, you know, like you aren't allowed to use the deck. And I was like, that's untrue. Stop. Okay. No. But also, right, like I love that deck because it reminds me a lot of I work with the dead all the time, so it's got a lot of skeletons on it, and I really like that. I like it because it reminds me of the culture that I grew up around, because I've grown up basically like 20 minutes from the Mexican border. So the culture here is so steeped in like Hispanic heritage that there's no way that I'm not going to identify with that. So I loved that deck for that reason. I also love that like Hispanic culture is very close to Asian culture, which is so family oriented, and it's very like prideful, and it's really, really nice in terms of you know, deep, rich culture. And so I really like to honor that. But yeah, that's my favorite deck, and I think it's really funny too because I have 3 copies of it.
Why?
Well, okay, so I'm one of those people that likes the bend in her cards, but also I know that eventually they're gonna fall apart, so I have stockpiled this deck.
Oh, so you're just like preparing.
Yeah, I'm preparing for when one falls apart and then the other one falls apart, and then maybe I'll probably, honestly, I was thinking the other day, I was like, should I just buy another one for like when I have a kid and like they can have it? I'm just like doing too much.
Oh wow, you're like planning down the line. You're like,
oh, down the
this
whole
is gonna be handed down.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. So what does the daily practice look like for you? Because that's a really different personal thing that I feel like everybody has. Right. You know, those little things that they do. What does that look like for you?
So in the morning, I play music when I wake up. I do this like ritual. I drink cacao in the morning instead of like coffee and stuff. So I'll make my cacao and I'll turn on music. I usually do like, it depends on what I'm feeling and who's around. I have such a large spiritual team and people just come in and out. Especially I have like a billion ancestors, and my house is pretty much open and fair game for all the dead people in my lineage that aren't trying to like mess with me or anything, which opens up for my family, my adopted family, and then my birth family, that's two sides of ancestors.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so that's a lot of people. So it depends. Sometimes I'll play like traditional Vietnamese music. Sometimes I'll play like straight up like Norse drumming, right, with like my gods and everything, or I'll play Egyptian music. So I'll do that. I'll meditate for a little bit. I always meditate before I work because I don't want everybody's stuff messing with me. So I do that. I very frequently keep up like the altar I have behind me, and then I have another working altar, and I do a lot of like food offerings. So usually in the morning it's breakfast, and I actually put a lot of work into that, which is mostly because that's the only time I really have is in the morning before I start working. And then by the end of the day, I'm super tired. So my personal practice is actually, it's not a lot of big stuff. It's a lot of me throughout the day doing very little things for my ancestors or my gods and my guides. Also, I just straight up talk to them. So I don't put a lot of like procedure into the things that I do, because honestly, like for me, it's kind of like I can just wake up and kind of be like, hey, what's up, everybody? What are we doing today? You know, and I'll pull cards or whatever to see what's up. But yeah, generally it's kind of just like if I was waking up with my family, you know, if I lived with my family, it's the same thing. I just have to light a candle and make sure that there's food on this bed here so they don't yell at me all day long. And that's it. Yeah, my personal practice varies so much based on what I'm doing and how much time I have and who's around and what's going on in the world too. Sometimes my personal practice will kind of take a backseat to like bigger things, like with when COVID started coming out, like when that started gaining, you know, traction, and then when the entire fight for racial equality started happening, everything I did was on pause. I was like, I'm going to take care of that, obviously, right? Like, I don't think I'm going to be the person who's going to like save the whole world, right? Like my magic isn't going to fix all of those problems, but I am a person who knows I have a good amount of personal power. So I decided that I was at least going to do what I could. So in situations like that, my personal practice kind of slows down a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. That's very similar to I would assume from what I know about you that you're very much more of like a folk practitioner. And yeah, like I am definitely the same way. It's very on like a not casual but like a personal level. It's not super ceremonial or like ritualistic. It's very much just like, here's your candlelight, gonna see how you're doing, gonna thank you for everything you've given me, meditate a little bit, and like, you know, like it's not something that's like at this planetary hour on this day, you know, you're just kind of like
always that's what I say about my witchcraft in general too. Even like the way I present my brand is I tell people like, dude, it's not I love that meme of the guy in the water that's like, it's not that deep, because it's really like it's deep, but it doesn't have to be like that crazy. It doesn't have to have so much to do and fluff and whatever around it. Like witchcraft is something that it should be part of every single day. There's magic in literally every moment. So I don't think that it's time efficient, honestly, to like make everything a big deal, because most likely the entities that you're working with don't give a shit. They're just like, as long as you're showing up and you're saying hi, like they have other things to do. They're not sitting there counting the days you didn't put water on the altar. They're not just like, we're watching you. They don't,
I have the receipts. You're like, oh, I'm sorry.
Like, this is how many days you haven't done this.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. So I like to take a more like chill approach to stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely like there's that balance of showing respect for, you know, your ancestors, but also it's like I don't personally believe that they're sitting around being like, well, it's Friday, so you better be doing like this, you know, yeah. But I mean, maybe it's different like on their birthdays or something like that. That's like a special thing, but I don't feel like they're back here like, you missed my birthday, bad luck.
Right. No,
you know, 3 blessings. You're like, what?
All the good things happening to you, say goodbye.
Gone. Okay, so you're doing most of your stuff in the morning, then you do mainly readings, I'm assuming, the rest of your day?
Yeah, actually the bulk of my work right now is energy work, so like spiritual gift activations. I do a lot of ancestral line healing, so I go into people's bodies, and all of that Scorpio in my chart really has me working in people's bones and stuff, which is really insane. I do healing through blood, and I can also, I've just realized this, but I have a gift of like being able to take blood or like examine your blood and basically tell you your lineage, where you came from. And even if you don't know it, it's really cool. I had a client yesterday who I did that with him, and he is African American, and I was like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but there's Scandinavian in your blood. Like it was like bright for me. And I was like, there's Icelandic and Scandinavian. And he goes, oh yeah, I just, I've done the Ancestry thing. He's like, I was really surprised when I saw that too. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay. I mean,
verification. It's weird when it happens.
like we're just gonna ignore how crazy that is and just keep going. But yeah, no, I do that, and then I do coaching. So I do a lot of like training people or showing them different avenues of witchcraft, which is, for me, it's intuitive work. So I'm not going to teach somebody like Reiki if their sole purpose has nothing to do with Reiki. Like if that's not stuff that they like to do or something that they're equipped to do, like in their body or whatever, I'm not going to teach them that. So I do a lot of the coaching, and then I'm pretty much done. Depending on what day, sometimes I finish at 4 and sometimes I finish at like 7. And then after that, I will either just go about my day and do regular things, but most of the time I find myself still working on like other projects that I have, working on posts, working on content, working on like projects with my friends, or like with Sarah and I, my business partner, we will just sit around and just like do magic on like a Wednesday night, like over the phone and stuff. So we keep our spooky activities to when the sun goes down.
Okay, so because you're a reader, what are the do's and don'ts of getting a reading? So like if I'm coming in as a client, what are my do's and don'ts? Like if you could just tell me straight away of like, please do this and please do not do this.
Okay, so one of the things that I usually tell people is don't ignore your gut feeling. So if you book with like a reader or something, or if you see a reader and they have a bunch of like really good reviews, say on Instagram or whatever, but you're looking at their profile and you're like, I don't vibe with this, don't try. Don't even push past that. Don't even be like, yeah, it'll work, you know, maybe, right? Because there's that mentality of, well, everybody else is having a good experience with this person, so I should be able to, whatever. Don't ignore the vibes. Like, it sounds kind of like, you know, a little too millennial to say that, but it really is. Like, don't ignore the energy, because that's what's gonna tell you if you should work with that person. The other thing is, I like to tell people not to ask questions that won't matter in 5 years or 2 or whatever. And also, do not ask questions that take away your personal responsibility. And I know that's like a weird thing for a lot of people. You've probably seen me do it in my lives before. Like when people ask me like, when am I going to get a new job? Or when am I going to have better money? I'm like, don't ask me those questions. Ask me, how can I make my money better? Ask me, how can I get a better job? Don't ask me when.
Proactive questions.
Yeah.
Because you can do something about.
Yeah, because like asking when is basically asking, when is the universe going to put that in my lap without me having to work for it? And it's like, no, dude, don't do that. Or like, oh, I hate when people are like, when am I going to find the love of my life? And I'm like, when you realize that it's you. When you look in the mirror and you go, oh, it me, hi.
Who's that?
Who's that? That I just had, so side story, I've recently started getting into not really like self-love or whatever, like I'm really big on that, but I'm a very critical person, and so I've just started doing like microdosing with like, you know, mushrooms and stuff. And my very first time, I was like waiting for some crazy stuff to happen or whatever. I was like, I don't feel anything. What's going on? And the only thing I got out of that like very small microdosing trip was I walked into my bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I'm kind of cute.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, hold on. And I was looking at my own Instagram and I was like, wait. I guess what it did, it just took that critical lens away from me. And I realized on Instagram, I was like looking at my own photos and I was like, oh my God, this is what people on the outside see. I was like, hold on. This is what my Instagram looks like when I don't look at it, but when other people look at this. And I was like, I am kind of attractive.
Yes. You were like, damn, I'm like sexy.
But yeah, that's generally what I tell people is like, don't be asking questions out here that take away your responsibility in them. And I also don't think that people should be asking me just general stupid things, right? Like things that are only for personal gain. Don't ask me if, oh my God, at one point when I think it was sometime last year, there was a weird 2 weeks where I was doing my lives and I had all of these like baseball fans asking me who was going to win the World Series. Like 3 weeks in a row. And I think 1 week I was like late by like 2 minutes and they're like, you're late. And I was like, I'm gonna block all of you guys because I am not here for this. But it was the weirdest moment of my career, truly still, is that all of these, like, I think it was like Yankees fans. And I was like,
oh my God,
what is happening right now? So don't ask questions like that. And then the other thing I think is like the very first and the very number one thing that people should know about getting a reading, any type of reading, any type of work, is don't go in there thinking you know better, because sometimes there are things that are said that you may not want to hear, but they are the truth. And it's not because the reader wants to be mean to you, and it's not because the reader thinks, you know, cares anything about your life, because let's be honest, like, your reader doesn't care about you. Not in a bad way, but in your life to tell you don't date this person or do date this. I don't care, dude. Like, make the decisions you want to make. I'm just going to give you the information that I see. So I have had a couple clients where I've told them and they've been like, well, I don't know, because they've been doing this for like 3 years and every year it's different. And I'm like, well, there's your pattern. So I don't know what you want me to say. Like, yeah. There's that. So yeah, pretty simple things, I think, really, but common sense is lost sometimes.
Super spiritual person, that's your job, that's your life. What are you doing when you're not reading tarot, when you're not
I don't, breathing, sleeping, I don't know. No, I love to cook. I still love art, even though it's not my job anymore. It's still like a good outlet for me. I honestly, and this is like the worst ever for me to say, like, this is so, I have an American chart and a Asian chart, and my American chart is, I mean, they're different. So my American chart, I'm a Capricorn sun, and this is where it's coming from, which is I like to work. I actually like find working fun. Not necessarily always taking clients, but every time I do something for my business that's in the spiritual realm, it's like I never ever don't enjoy that. So honestly, it's either me doing things for fun that will also kind of help my business, or just me straight up cooking and binging, you know, food and binging trash reality TV, because I am that person.
You seem like you like to create a lot of things.
Yeah, I am for sure like a creator or whatever. I have so many ideas that eventually I realize that I am more of like a middleman sometimes for other people's ideas, because everything that I think of, I cannot physically do in my life. Like, I don't have the time. Like, there's no way. Honestly, if somebody gave me the chance right now and they were like, TeeJay, we're gonna give you all this money and you can open a restaurant, I'd be like, sure, let's do it. Let's go. Okay. Yeah, sure. But also, me thinking about like doing that on my own, I feel like that's a lot of work. I'm not gonna do that. So yeah, it's really a lot of that. It's a lot of reading. I'm a musician, so sometimes I'll play the piano when I feel like I gotta like remember who I am a little bit and get back to my roots. But yeah, I don't know. That's like such a weird question. That's like making me realize that I need some more hobbies, actually. Do things other than work.
Yeah, that's been pretty much my whole quarantine, is just kind of like hungry. My rising is Capricorn, so we're gonna move into the Patreon section of the questions. So we have other questions that I'm gonna ask TeeJay that are Patreon exclusive, but for everybody else, thank you so much for watching, and TeeJay, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I loved it. I love you. I'm obsessed. So
oh, thank you. I know, I love your page. So so that was TeeJay. I really hope that you enjoyed meeting her as much as I did. I love getting those different insights from different practitioners and their different backgrounds and different perspectives. And of course, to find TeeJay and see wherever she is doing her stuffs on the internet, links are all down below. She has a few. Follow her on social media, and she actually does some pretty good witch tips. So if those are the things that you're looking for, definitely check that out. But that's all for today. I actually have another interview for you tomorrow? Next week. I hope that you enjoy. This is somebody that I have looked up to for a few years now, and I was so excited to talk to her. I'm excited to share that with you next Wednesday, but I will see you in that video. And as always, best of luck, be kind to each other, and may your gods treat you as you've treated others. Bye.